Hey guys, welcome back. So let's start setting up the hip file, and I would assume that you would be receiving some sort of asset or a set that you have to work with. And in this case, I have a couple of assets that I'm going to load in. So I have two rocks. I'm going to name them rock 1 and rock 02. Use a file node. And I'm going to copy this. And I have the beach. And I'm gonna scale this up a bit. And scale it like that. And the idea is we're going to use this as a collision geometry. All this is collision geometry, and we're going to have some kind of emitter that simply emits fluid. And that's the whole idea for the workflow. Okay, let's load one more thing. I have the emitter ready, but I'll use it just for a preview to show you guys, and then we're going to create we're gonna recreate it again so you guys get understand the idea behind it. So that's our emitter. And one thing when you work in with remote or doing working on a complex file, it's nice to separate each individual step that could be iterated on in a separate node, in a separate graph. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a separate geo node. I'm going to call this effects call for collision. Okay, and let's go in and create nulls to clean this up and make it so this would be out rock 01 and rock 02, and I'll explain the idea in a second. I'm gonna import object merge each one of them here. So let's do that. Let's hide everything others to see it. Rock 02. And the beach. And as we saw before, we need to prepare this geometry for collision. We need to prepare SDFs so that we use the most efficient workflow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use VDB from Polygon. And this is good. The resolution is good here. I'm going to keep it. And I'm gonna use a VDB convert and convert this geometry into polygon back into polygons. Okay, I'm gonna use some adaptivity because most of the time when you receive assets like this, they're 3D scans and they're very high res. So even this one is still high res. And you can create a volume. That's great. Use the original geometry to create the collision SDF. But we don't have to use that one. We can just remesh the VDB again and get a low res geometry that is much easier and much lighter to work with. I'm going to call this out rock 01 geo, and we'll do this same thing here, and we can check the resolution. This is very reasonable. It's not too high, it's not too low for this geometry. Sorry, and this VDB. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing for these two guys. Okay, cool. So this is working. This is probably a bit high. Let's try 2.5. Yep, 10%. And last but not least, the beach. Cool. So now we have all the outputs ready and we can pass this to the DOP network. And I'm going to import the emitter for now, and we'll recreate it again in the next video. So I'm going to use a fluid source, and we'll go back over this flip source. And I'm going to set this to out splash source. Okay. And we have to make sure that this is, we need to switch that and then back, make sure that everything is set up correctly. Okay, so we have all the data needed. And the reason I made this in a separate node is, let's say you're working with someone else and they found that the collision geometry could be improved, or a new method for doing the collision. You can simply delete this block and copy that node from the different setup. If, for example, you have, they did some work on rock 01, but the output is still the same, you can just delete this guy and import whatever new network you have. So this way you can easily swap components of the setup without having to reconnect everything. Okay, so let's create a DOP network. I'm going to call this splash sim. And we're going to create the usual nodes. I'm going to create a flip solver, flip object, and a flip volume source. We need gravity, and then we need static objects. So we'll call this rock 01. And let's set it up. So this would go, would be coming from the out collision. So that's the geo. And then under the volume, we're going to specify our own SDF. So that would be rock VDB1. And we can check the collision here. It's pretty high res. It should be fine. Let's copy this. Let's see. Okay, that looks good. And the beach. Gonna merge all these guys together. And I'm gonna merge this. Make sure left input is first, then the rest, because we have to match this this order. And let's set up the fluid, the flip source. That's coming from the emitter, and here I'm gonna change this to source flip. Okay, let's increase the domain here to include that, and let's move this up 35. I think we'll do more, do 50, set this to 25. Okay, and let's see. I'm gonna change the visualizer under the flip object. Instead of particles, I'm gonna change this to particles. And also we need to make sure that we clean this up. We don't need any inputs. If you look before, was here, we don't need that. And let's link the particle separation to the fluid, to the emitter. I'm gonna copy that, go back up, and paste relative reference here. And I'm going to increase this to 0.4. And if we hit play, we should see some water falling. Yep, and it's colliding with everything. So in the next video, we're going to recreate the emitter to show you guys how we made that geometry. And then we're going to set up the initial forces and continue after that. Thank you for watching, and see you in a bit.